us in on, for some of the people who don't know, what Philo is, what Philo does, and how you got started?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so Philo is a virtual MVPD, and usually I have to, with most audiences, start off by explaining what that is. That it's a streaming TV service. I think this is probably one of the few crowds that doesn't need a definition on that one. We have, so the short snapshot is we're a skinny bundle, $20 for 57 channels. We're on 6 different platforms, and we have some cool, unique features. One of the sort of things that's pretty interesting is that you can sign up for a free trial of Philo with just about 30 seconds just by entering your phone number. We text you a code, you click it, and you're into the product and using it.
Good. You guys started as like a cheap service for college students, right? So how
So I'd probably characterize not so much a cheap. It was for the students. It was actually free.
Okay. That's very cheap.
It was very cheap. But from a content perspective, it was actually a full, generally it's sort of full cable channel selection. So it was offered as an amenity. But yeah, basically how we got started was going into universities and helping them to replace their aging wired cable infrastructure in the dorms that would let people watch cable TV in the dorms, replacing that with a modern OTT service that would let students watch everything they wanted to anywhere on campus on whatever device they want, so on their laptop, on their phone, everything you'd expect from a modern streaming service.
Okay, so how has it evolved and what lessons did you learn from doing it?
Yeah, so I think we learned a bunch of interesting things. First of all, it was just a great opportunity to sort of have a kind of a laboratory for building a streaming service. So at that point, it was basically impossible to go launch a full OTT service because you couldn't get the rights to the content. So this allowed us to go leverage the content rights of the universities because they had the rights to stream that content on campus, and go build from a product perspective everything we needed for a streaming service. So we figured out how to build, do the signal ingest and encoding and DVR and delivery of the service to multiple platforms and all that stuff. So it was a really great opportunity to learn how to build a fantastic product. And then also from a content perspective, it was super valuable because we were able to amass a lot of really valuable data about what content people are watching and what content people find most compelling. And then when it came time for us to go to sort of phase 2 of the company and launch our direct-to-consumer OTT service, we had a wealth of data that we could use to be very analytical about how we approached what content we're actually going to offer as part of the service.
So my big question is, why no sports or news?
Yeah, so we get that question a lot, and it really comes back to what I was just talking about the data. So I think, as you're probably aware, sports and news content really drives the lion's share of the cost in the content world. So, just for a concrete example, ESPN alone is probably driving between $10 and $15 of an end user's cable bill, monthly bill from Comcast or whoever.
Right, but doesn't it also drive the lion's share of viewing?
It drives, sure. It's very popular content, to be sure. So that plus news and everything, it drives a lot of the cost. And what we basically found after looking at the data was not only are most of the other streaming services out there not offering a package that doesn't include that content, but on a sort of dollar for dollar basis, when we analyzed the data and looked at who's watching what and then the relative cost of that content, we felt that we could really put together a much more valuable bundle without that content. And so, $20 a month for 57 channels, the content we have is really compelling stuff that people are excited to watch. And the other nice thing is that it's really complementary to most of the other services, because most of the other services out there do include that sports and news content. And so what we find is that a lot of our customers are pairing Philo with one of the other services.
Philo and Fubo? Or something like that?
Yeah, Philo and Fubo, or Philo and YouTube TV is another pretty popular combination. And that actually, I was noticing that was reflected in Tony's content also when he was talking about the average number of I think 2.25 or something, services per typical subscriber, and we're definitely seeing that.
Okay, let's talk about the model. Why Why subscription versus, did you look at the ad-based model as well, or did you thought about a hybrid or something else?
Certainly, I mean, obviously AVOD is a hot topic right now, and a lot of folks are looking at that. I mean, look, I think the short answer to the question is that just the content that we found compelling that we wanted to put in our package, from an economics perspective, is not really compatible with a pure ad model, right? The content costs are a little too high to cover with just advertising revenue. But we actually have a hybrid model that we have. So we do have a subscription fee, monthly fee for our subscribers. But we are also, we do also have ad revenue, and that's actually an important part of our economic model. We rely on both, and we're pretty excited. From a technology perspective, we've actually invested a lot in the advertising side of things. We build a lot of our technology stack in-house, and one of the things we've built is a server-side ad insertion service, so that we can basically dynamically insert ads on a per session, per user basis. And that allows us to, as we go forward, become increasingly sophisticated about what ads we're showing to who and make those ads more valuable, both for our users who would rather see a relevant ad and for our advertisers who would like to have better targeting.
Okay, well that leads into my next question, and since you're the CTO, I should ask you a technology question, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
How do you try to make your technology and platform stand out? How does it differ from all the other services out there?
Sure. I mean, I think sort of from a broad philosophical point of view, one difference I think is that we're sort of a technology company at heart. We're a Silicon Valley startup. We're in San Francisco. We take everything, we approach everything from a very technology and product and sort of user-centric point of view. So I sort of think of it as we are a technology company that is, in the streaming space, as opposed to a media company that's has a technology product. And sort of concretely, as I said, we've sort of gone deep and invested in building a lot of the pieces of the system ourselves. We certainly use technology vendors anytime we can. We don't want to reinvent any wheels, but at the same time, the parts of the system that are sort of core to our business, things like the sort of dynamic ad insertion engine server side, where we've built a whole manifest generator that can, I'm getting a little technical here, but it can generate manifests for both Dash and HLS. And again can do custom targeting on a per user basis. That's something like that where we've gone pretty deep. Another example is just in terms of crafting the user experience in the UI. We really take a very sort of careful and thoughtful approach in terms of trying to build a service that works exactly the way we would want it to work as users and as consumers of modern apps, where it's like very seamless to find the content you want to watch. It's easy to search for something. We try to recommend good content. We've actually just started rolling out machine learning-based algorithmic recommendation systems and things like that. So those are a couple of examples.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up about that. You rolled out a couple of interesting things: the joint recommendations thing and the synchronized viewing. Yeah,
so both of those are sort of not quite skunk works, but those are sort of both projects that are in flight. So the recommendations thing we've started to roll out, and that is already available in our web interface. And that's not a joint recommendation feature. That's just for any individual user, we're going to recommend content that, based on their viewing history and based on other shows we think that they would find exciting to watch. The synchronized viewing thing is pretty cool, though. I think the short version is we think that TV is inherently one of the most sort of social mediums that's out there. People love to watch TV with friends and family. They love to talk about the TV they've been watching. I think increasingly people will watch TV and text their friends while they're watching it to sort of talk in real time about what's happening. And we want to sort of start to bring some of that into the product. So we actually built a prototype, and we gave a tech talk about it at Demuxed, which is a video engineering conference that was back in the fall. But it's basically a way, we built this on top of existing adaptive bitrate technologies, but it allows multiple people to have a sort of watch party where they're all watching the same content. It could either be live or time shifted. But their viewing sessions are all synchronized, so they're watching the same thing at the same time. And the idea is that if your spouse is traveling, you've been binge watching some show together, they have to go to Vegas for a conference. You're in your hotel, you guys can watch the same thing and sort of stay up to date with that. And eventually we'll be able to do things like have messaging. In real time, you'd be able to actually send messages back and forth through the product.
How far away is that?
We actually have an internal version of it now that our employees are already playing around with. We don't have a solid timeline for rolling it out. One of the things we really want to do is, we are very careful about making sure we get the details right with things, and the vast majority of our minutes watched on our product is on the 10-foot platform. So things like Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, and so forth. And the functionality I just described is sort of tricky to get right in that context, because if you're watching on the big screen, you've got a remote with just a 4-way D-pad control. You want to start a sharing session with your friend or your spouse. You need to have a nice seamless way to do that, and it would be difficult to, for example, obviously you don't want to pop up a box on screen where somebody has to type in their friend's email address with an annoying D-pad based keyboard or something like that. So we're working on actually some pretty cool mechanisms that would let you actually use your phone synchronized to the streaming device, so that you say, I want to share this, it pops up a message on your phone, you can just tap on your friend's contact information to share it with them, and then they get just one click to get brought into the session. So it's going to take a little while to get those details right, but we're excited to be working on that.
Okay. I have a couple more questions, but I want to get the audience involved. Any questions out there? I don't know if we have the mic in here.
In a second. Okay.
Okay, you do. See anybody? Okay.
How are you sharing the data?
How are you sharing the data?
Or protecting it?
About data about what people are watching, or?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Well, we don't share that. So we share data with our content providers to give them some insights into what content people are watching and all that. Obviously, that we have contracts around all that stuff. We don't share our data generally with other companies. We are working on, as I said, some sort of social features that would let you share things with your friends, watch things together, and that would involve the ability for your friends to potentially see what you've been watching, for example, and vice versa. That's one of the interesting things we saw with being in the university space. Is I think college students are sort of more comfortable with that kind of thing, obviously having grown up in a social media universe where much of what they do is already online. And what we found is that most folks are fairly comfortable with that, but we would obviously have controls around that, so you can turn that off if you don't want to expose that kind of information.
Okay.
I'm curious if you've done a survey of the market for the synchronized co-viewing. I'm really interested to see how the market takes that up.
Short answer is no, we haven't really. We think it's cool. We generally try to build stuff that we think as users we would find compelling. I'm right there with you. I'm going to be fascinated to see if folks think it's really cool, or fewer folks engage with it than we expect. But I'm certainly excited about it.
Well, Lightreading does surveys, so
Okay.
if you ever need any help with them.
Very cool. Yeah.
Jeff.
Hey, Matt, thanks for coming here.
Hey, my pleasure.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Since direct to consumer for streaming is kind of a little bit different than in terms of you actually have to go and find subscribers. So I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about what channels you're using and kind of what's been the most effective way to bring new subscribers in the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think our head of marketing is joining for another session tomorrow, and that's really his wheelhouse. But broadly speaking, we market direct to consumers, so I think we try to take a very broad approach in terms of exploring all the channels for marketing that are out there. So the usual ones, online search, Google and so forth, Facebook, but then a bunch of other things like blogs and just general digital advertising. And we just try to measure the effectiveness of all those things, and then sort of go deeper where we're seeing good performance. But we take a very broad approach, and we're actually starting to roll out advertising that's not online, that's, things like, public transit, bus ads, and things like that. So we're just getting started with that kind of thing.
Okay.
Thanks.
One last question, and then we'll have to call.
Hi, thanks. Are there any differences between the EDU, the college and university service, and the public consumer service, whether it be services or content or devices?
Yes, there's quite a few differences. So let's see. So from a content perspective, there's a lot of differences because the college product, like I said, leveraged the rights of the university. So we would carry whatever channels that university had rights to. With the direct-to-consumer product, we have our bundle that we crafted, and that we got our own rights to directly with the content providers. So content-wise, that there's a fairly big difference there. And then we really sort of, I guess in one way you can think of it that the direct-to-consumer product is kind of like our version 2.0 of our product. So we've got new versions of all the apps that we have, and it's a sort of new version of our back end. We have everything in the cloud for the direct-to-consumer product, so we use AWS for our compute, and we're distributing things through CDNs, of course. So from a technical perspective, there are some shared components, but the architecture looks pretty different because the direct-to-consumer thing we're doing at massive scale. We're growing super fast at this point. We just doubled our user base over the last 5 months. We're expecting to double again over the next 5 or 6. So that's pretty different from the on-campus product where we have our hardware that we deploy and we kind of provision it for the number of students that we know are going to be there, and that's sort of a very different architecture.
So interesting. So you're almost ready to take on Netflix and Amazon.
Yeah, it's it's an exciting market. Obviously, this industry is never a dull moment. You blink twice, and the landscape has changed a lot. So it's an exciting place to be.
Okay. Well, please join me in. I'm sorry, we have to. Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm happy to chat with folks after as well.
Yeah. I just want to keep everybody on schedule as much as we can. So please join me in thanking Ben.